Hi everyone, welcome back to the Palette of the Past. In today's episode, we are going to describe the story of Jacob and Esau from Genesis chapter 25. From the complexities of sibling rivalry to the symbolism of the birthright, we will explore the moral and ethical dimensions of their interactions. If you enjoy this video, give it a like and consider subscribing for more interesting stories. Isaac, the son of Abraham, reached the age of 40 when he took Rebekah as his wife. Similar to his parents, he also faced delays in starting a family. However, the delay wasn't entirely his fault. Rather, it seemed that Rebekah, despite being meticulously chosen by Abraham's servant as Isaac's bride, was unable to conceive. While there are parallels between Isaac and Rebekah's situation and that of Abraham and Sarah's, it remains uncertain whether Sarah's inability to conceive was solely due to her advanced age, or if there were underlying medical factors. In contrast, Rebekah's barrenness is explicitly mentioned, presenting a seemingly more hopeless circumstance than Sarah's. It's noteworthy that despite being the promised and revered son of Abraham, Isaac wasn't granted all his desires effortlessly. Like his father, he had to exhibit faith in God and confront seemingly insurmountable challenges. In the face of Rebekah's infertility, Isaac doesn't succumb to despair or blame either himself or God. Instead, he turns to God for guidance and demonstrates unwavering faith, believing that divine intervention is the solution to their predicament. Genesis chapter 25, verse 21. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. This passage illustrates Isaac's reliance on prayer and trust in God's ability to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. It portrays a profound example of faith and reliance on divine providence amidst adversity. Indeed, Isaac's prayer for children was answered, but the fulfillment of his prayer was not immediate. According to biblical accounts, Isaac married at the age of 40, yet his sons Esau and Jacob were not born until he reached the age of 60. This signifies that Isaac had to endure a waiting period of 20 years before witnessing the realization of his prayer for offspring. The passage of time underscores the patience and perseverance Isaac displayed in his faith journey, as well as the eventual fulfillment of God's promise to him and Rebekah. Indeed, unlike the direct encounters between God and Abraham, the biblical narrative does not explicitly mention God speaking directly to Isaac in the context of his prayer for children. Therefore, Isaac lacked the assurance of knowing whether God had heard his plea. Despite this uncertainty, Isaac's unwavering faith in God led him to trust that his prayers were heard, even without direct communication or immediate results. Isaac's steadfastness in his faith allowed him to maintain hope and perseverance, believing that God's timing and plan would unfold in due course. Isaac's fidelity and faithfulness are indeed notable throughout the 20 years of waiting for his prayer to be answered. Despite the delay in having children and the absence of a direct divine communication, Isaac remains resolute in his trust in God's promises and timing. In contrast to taking matters into his own hands or seeking alternative solutions, Isaac demonstrates unwavering loyalty and commitment to Rebekah. He does not pursue other women in an attempt to produce offspring outside of his marriage, nor does he resort to impatience or doubt regarding God's plan. During Rebekah's pregnancy with twins, she experienced a tumultuous time as the babies jostled within her womb. This caused her significant concern and discomfort, prompting her to seek guidance from God. Genesis chapter 25, verse 22. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. Rebekah's inquiry demonstrated her deep faith and reliance on God's wisdom and intervention during this challenging time. Indeed, in response to Rebekah's inquiry, the Lord provides her with insight and prophecy regarding the twins within her womb. God reveals to Rebekah that 2 nations and 2 peoples will come from her offspring. Furthermore, God foretells that the older son will serve the younger, indicating a reversal of traditional birthright expectations. Genesis chapter 25, verse 23, NIV. The Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. This direct communication from God to Rebekah highlights the unique manner in which divine guidance was provided. In Rebekah's case, God chose to provide her with direct insight and reassurance regarding the tumultuous pregnancy she was experiencing. This could indeed be interpreted as a demonstration of God's compassion and understanding towards the concerns and anxieties of expectant mothers. The divine revelation to Rebekah served to calm her worries and offer solace during a challenging time. Also, God reveals to Rebekah not only the number and gender of the children she carries, but also the future dynamics of their relationship. The prophecy is indeed clear and profound, providing specific details about the twins she carries, their future roles, and the dynamics of their relationship. God tells her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. This straightforward statement indicates that Rebekah will give birth to twins, who will each become the progenitors of distinct nations, perpetually at odds with one another. Continuing, God says, 1 will be stronger than the other, implying a dominance or superiority of one brother over the other. Lastly, God concludes, and the older will serve the younger, suggesting a reversal of traditional expectations where the older sibling typically inherits leadership or authority. Traditionally, younger siblings were expected to serve the older ones, but in stories like Isaac and Ishmael, things were different. Isaac, the younger one, was chosen to inherit Abraham's blessings and was seen as special. Some may say this was because both Abraham and Sarah were his parents, as God intended, not just because he was younger. Now, with Rebekah's twins, God said something surprising. The younger brother would be greater than the older one. This goes against what people expected. But why did God decide this, you might wonder, especially since neither child was born yet, and they hadn't done anything good or bad. God's ways are mysterious, and He sees things differently from us. Even before the twins were born, God knew what their futures held. His decision might seem strange, but it's part of His bigger plan, one that we might not fully understand. Some theories suggest that God, knowing everything that would happen in the future, already saw the good and bad actions of Esau and Jacob. Based on this foresight, He decided that Jacob was more worthy and preferable than his brother. This idea is hinted at in Malachi chapter 1, verse 2-3, where God says, "Yet I have loved Jacob, but Esau I have hated. I have turned his hill country into a wasteland and left his inheritance to the desert jackals." Essentially, Esau's destiny seemed determined from the very beginning, and God had already decided who would serve whom. Some people interpret the mention of God hating Esau not as a personal hatred towards him, but rather as God's rejection of the idea that Esau would receive the covenant of Abraham instead of Jacob. As we later see, Esau is not depicted as dishonorable or malicious. In fact, he demonstrates many traits that contrast Jacob, making Jacob seem weak and lazy in comparison. It's worth noting that despite God's judgment, Isaac still favors Esau as his favorite son. Another theory, though speculative, suggests that God chose Jacob over Esau because Esau supposedly attempted to harm Jacob while they were still in the womb. However, it's essential to recognize that this detail isn't explicitly mentioned in the Bible. According to a Jewish legend, whenever Rebekah was close to an idol of a false god, Esau would kick in her womb. Conversely, when she approached a place dedicated to the Lord, Jacob would kick. Some interpret these kicks as indications of the baby's recognition or excitement for one deity over the other. However, it's important to note that this tale is not explicitly stated in the Bible. Moreover, some view it as unfair and unreliable to consider the movements of unborn babies as any indication of divine preference. Genesis chapter 25, verses 24 to 26. When the time came for Rebekah to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out, with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. Indeed, the biblical account describes Esau as coming out first and being red and hairy, possibly indicating his unusual appearance at birth, including his reddish or ruddy complexion and his hairy body. Jacob's birth, on the other hand, is highlighted by his hand grasping onto Esau's heel. This gesture symbolizes their struggle within the womb and hints at the dynamic relationship between the twins even before their birth. Jacob's action of grasping Esau's heel could be seen as a metaphor for his desire to surpass his brother or to assert his own significance even from the moment of birth. Esau's victory in being born first is clear from this exchange, but Jacob's resentment and frustration toward his brother are evident even at this early stage as he grasps Esau's heel, perhaps attempting to hinder his progress. This act foreshadows Jacob's future as a swindler, for by seizing his brother's heel, he could be likened to a heel catcher, a term suggesting deceit or dishonesty. This episode hints at the complex relationship dynamics and character traits that will unfold in Jacob's life. The Bible doesn't delve into the childhood of Esau and Jacob in this section. Rather, it fast-forwards to their adulthood. Esau emerges as a skilled hunter and outdoorsman, while Jacob prefers to stay at home and dwell among the tents. This contrast between the siblings highlights Esau's assertiveness and perhaps extroverted nature, juxtaposed with Jacob's calm demeanor, possibly indicating introversion. The narrative also suggests that neither Isaac nor Rebekah loved their sons equally, with Isaac favoring Esau and Rebekah favoring Jacob. In Genesis chapter 25, verse 29 to 31, the passage describes a significant encounter between the two brothers. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." That is why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." The passage describes a moment when Esau, returning hungry from hunting, encounters his brother Jacob, who is cooking stew. Esau, feeling famished, asks Jacob for some of the stew. Jacob, seeing an opportunity, responds by asking Esau to sell him his birthright in exchange for the stew. Jacob knew that birthright was a significant inheritance and blessing given to the firstborn son in ancient Jewish tradition. Since he came out of the womb holding his brother's heel, some people might think he always had some idea about its value, even if it was subconscious. The birthright wasn't just about boasting rights. It meant getting twice as much inheritance and becoming the leader of the family. With this understanding, Jacob's ambitions become evident. He desired these privileges for himself and was willing to exploit his brother's hunger to obtain them. His actions reveal a calculated pursuit of his own interests, even at the expense of his brother's well-being. However, Esau points out the absurdity of Jacob's demand. Genesis chapter 25, verse 32 to 33. "Look, I am about to die," Esau said. "What good is the birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. This incident shows that Jacob indeed embodies the notion of a heel catcher. He cunningly exploits his brother's desperate situation, making him an offer that Esau feels he can't refuse. Many view Jacob as the villain in this interaction, and it's hard to argue otherwise. He takes advantage of his brother's vulnerability and exploits him for his own gain. However, some argue that Esau is the real villain, because God had already chosen Jacob to carry the birthright when they were in the womb. According to this perspective, Jacob isn't swindling Esau out of anything. He already owns the birthright, and he's simply coaxing Esau into acknowledging it. Moreover, it's suggested that Esau sells the birthright, even though it doesn't rightfully belong to him. In doing so, he engages in dishonesty by trading for something he doesn't possess. Another viewpoint portrays Esau as the more dubious figure in this sibling rivalry. Esau fails to acknowledge the spiritual significance of the birthright. He disregards the covenant and the honor of being the first descendant of Isaac, choosing instead to trade his birthright for food. It could be argued that Esau felt compelled to sell the birthright or face starvation. However, one could also argue that as a skilled hunter, Esau had the ability to hunt and sustain himself. In this instance, he may have chosen not to exert the effort. This suggests that Esau did not value the legacy of Abraham or appreciate the significance of being a descendant of the great prophet. His willingness to easily part with the birthright reflects a lack of understanding or regard for his heritage. Genesis chapter 25, verse 34. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So the agreement was made, and Jacob obtained the birthright while Esau received bread and stew in exchange. As a result of this transaction, Esau came to despise his birthright, either because he never truly valued it from the start, or because he thought so little of it that he traded it without much consideration. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the birthright and whether Esau should have kept it or if Jacob was more deserving of it. Do you see Esau as the victim in this sibling rivalry, or do you think Jacob was justified in exploiting or exposing his brother to benefit himself? Share your opinions in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and give the video a thumbs up. Also, feel free to share your feedback or criticism in the comments below.